I am so conservative.
Rationalized in my head. These are things I read in
And
the
I'm going to talk about Willow Creek.
Okay.
Willow Creek, a few years back, had
remembered
invited...
at the time when Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized religion. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah. I am so conservative. If you didn't jump to conclusions, you might not get any exercise. I am so conservative. And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. This is just a bit of a trigger warning for those who think words are more injurious than sticks and stones. I really am so conservative I can't turn left even when I'm driving. In addition to giving trigger warnings to our viewers, Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection. Christian philosopher, apologist, educator, and our friend Vishal Mangalwadi joins us again this week as we enter the season of celebrating the incarnation of the one who claimed to be the way, the truth, and the life. Vishal exposes the spiritual assault on truth in the universities. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. And our senior researcher is Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast. And here is Ronnie Baby.
You keep me around for some reason. I'm not sure why, but greetings from sunny Florida, where the palm tree came out, saw its shadow, and now we have 12 more months of summer. Our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas whose time has gone. World's End Theology Outlet. Our guest on today's webcast, insert name here, that would be Vishal Mangalwadi, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast, hereafter known as the webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. This satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, smart remarks, and anything else that might fall under the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no liability for or responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content. Our regular announcements notice: the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too. If you enjoy it, or if it really annoys you and you want to inflict it on somebody else to ensure your continued access, please go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And as you do, never fear, this webcast is Y2K compliant. And don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. And now, time for the fake applause, the fake applause. We didn't have it last time you were here, but we have it now. This is fake applause. We can't afford real fake applause. You go like this and you go, and it's like applause, you know? So,
as close as we can.
I just thought something was missing. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, several weeks now. People need to be applauded when they dare to come on our webcast. You're a very brave man. Thank you for coming. So.
Yeah, and he just I know he was working on a special, like a documentary with Jordan Peterson.
Yes, I saw that.
Seen it, but he was mentioning it just before we went on air that it is finished and is now on the Daily Wire.
Oh, so, it is. Okay.
If you're interested in Jordan Peterson and Vishal Mangalwadi and you want to subscribe to the Daily Wire, you can see that as well. Now, I haven't seen it. I've had a number of people contact me to say, has Jordan Peterson become a Christian? I don't know how you're going to answer that, but as far as I can tell at this point, although he is Christian friendly, let's say, I don't find any particular indication that he's a believer at this point. So, but that's another discussion perhaps for another.
Now, were you on Jordan Peterson's webcast, or was he on yours? I was trying to figure that out.
Well, there are two separate things. One is a podcast, which he did many months ago. That's 1 hour, 47 minutes. That's just the two of us talking on Zoom. I like that one. But this new is a Daily Wire production. It's a professional documentary, very high value production, 44 minutes, filmed in Washington, D.C. in the Museum of the Bible. It's called Logos and Literacy, the Bible's impact on the spread of literacy around the world. So we are walking in the Museum of the Bible, being shown some of the exhibits and discussing them. So that has just come on the Daily Wire Plus, and this is the production quality is extremely good, but the message is expressing Jordan Peterson's Jungian, Joseph Campbell's perspective that Bible is a collection of stories which are the source of conservative values that he loves. So whether the Bible is actually revelation, whether it's truth, is not discussed. And the documentary is very good in that honors and promotes the Bible. It promotes the Museum of the Bible, but it is weak in giving a clear communication whether Logos really exists, whether on the first Christmas, Logos really became flesh and dwelt amongst us, full of grace and truth. So those issues are not clearly addressed. And it is a defense of the Bible as the source of the values of Western civilization. It's not a defense of the Bible itself.
Okay.
Right, but if you don't have an authoritative Bible on which to base those things, you have no authority then for claiming Western civilization is a more accurate representation of truth than, say, Hinduism. So
yes, well, that is true, but it is something to be grateful that people like Jordan Peterson and Tom Holland are championing the Bible as the only source of sanity to which the Western intellect must return.
Yes. Well, before we get too far into this, I wanted to kind of set up what we're doing today with the celebration, or not the celebration, but the anniversary of something that happened on tomorrow's date some years back, 80 or so years ago, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now, this comes out of Britannica.com, and they write, Admiral Husband E. Kimmel and Lieutenant General Walter C. Short, who shared command at Pearl Harbor, were warned of the possibility of war, specifically on October 16 and again on November 24 and 27. The notice of November 27 to Kimmel began, quote, "This dispatch is to be considered a war warning," end quote. Went on to say that, quote, "negotiations have ceased," end quote, and directed the admiral to, quote, "execute an appropriate defensive deployment," end quote. Kimmel was also ordered to, quote, "undertake such reconnaissance and other measures as you deem necessary," end quote. The communication of the same day to Short declared that, quote, "hostile action is possible at any moment," end quote. And, like its naval counterpart, urged, quote, "measures of reconnaissance," end quote. In response to these warnings, the measures taken by the Army and Navy were, as the event proved, far from adequate. Short ordered an alert against sabotage and concentrated most of his fighter planes at the base on Wheeler Field in an effort to prevent damage to them. He also gave orders to operate 5 of the mobile radar sets that had been set up on the island from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., considered to be the most dangerous period. Kimmel, despite the fact that his intelligence had not been able to locate substantial elements of the Japanese fleet, especially the first-line ships and carrier divisions 1 and 2, did not expand his reconnaissance activities to the northwest, the logical point for an attack. He moored the entire fleet, save that part that was at sea, in the harbor and permitted a part of his personnel to go on shore leave. Neither of these officers suspected that the base at Pearl Harbor would itself be subject to attack. nor for that matter is there any indication that their superiors in Washington were in any way cautious of the approaching danger. In the 10 days between the war warning of November 27 and the Japanese attack itself, no additional action was taken by Washington. Why would I start out with this?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, yeah, because there were warnings in advance of an
Yeah.
approaching danger. The ones with the power to thwart that danger were lackadaisical in their responses, not really even believing it, I would suggest. And not only did they not take appropriate action, but they really set themselves up for greater damage by how they consolidated the troops and it made it far easier for the assault to occur. Here's how this plays out. Vishal has for quite a long time. We have, you and I and others that we work with in the apologetics area, have been warning the church for decades now of the assault on truth. The near lack of sound teaching in churches to prepare people for what is now happening because they simply didn't believe it would happen. We live in a Western culture. However, it has now happened. Vishal he wrote an article not that long ago, which kind of got me to thinking this is a perfect date to kind of do this webcast on. He's writing about the new Prime Minister of the UK, who is, as it happens, very Hindu. As Vishal put it, a cow worshipping individual, highly educated. And he wrote this: post-truth universities have come to the same conclusion as traditional Hinduism, Buddhism, and Greek Gnosticism and rejected divine revelation. The result is Christianity is now a minority religion in the UK and shortly will be here in the US as well, I would suggest. When you say, Vishal, post-truth universities have come to the same conclusion, what is it that you're trying to tell the reader about the state of Christianity, the understanding of the Bible, and even education?
Well, thank you for inviting me on this show and for raising that very serious and important question. Most average preacher who will be speaking on Christmas this month would not realize, would not even know that Christmas is a philosophy that conquered Greek rationalism and mysticism. Greeks had rejected their own rationalism and faith in logic, just as the Western universities have rejected the confidence that the human mind can know the truth. So, for example, Harvard University, its logo is still Veritas, Latin for truth, that the university exists to seek and communicate truth, help researchers find truth. But the president of Harvard University gave a lecture at Beijing University, which had begun as a Presbyterian university, and Chairman Mao worked there as a junior librarian, and junior librarians were paid very little, and that's why he hated the capitalist system of some get paid too much, some get paid too little, and that university became the communist university. But then eventually Chairman Mao's statue there in front of the university was blown up. It was an American missionary born in China who spoke fluent Chinese who had created that university. Now, president of Harvard goes there and he says that Harvard University no longer really believes in truth. We believe in excellence. We are still the best because we are pursuing excellence. That means that we can teach young people how to make good robots. We no longer teach them whether marriage is truth, a man and a woman getting married, whether it's true that children have inalienable right to life, etc. Truth is not what university is seeking, because how can the human mind know the truth? This is the problem. This was the Greek problem. So Greeks believed, as a typical American evangelical today believes, that truth comes to us through stories, myths. Socrates began to question that no, most of these myths, contrary to what Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell would say, Socrates said no, most of these myths are actually invented by priests and sages in their own self-interest. They're inventing this shrine for Zeus because they want you to go there and make donations to sustain the priests. So myths are enslaving. They're not pursuit of truth. They are manipulative stories created by fallen but intelligent minds. So Socrates is questioning myths and teaching young people to question these man-made myths, which evangelicals today from America are promoting stories. And Socrates was questioning them. And his grand disciple, that's Aristotle, if myths and stories are not the source of truth, then logic is the source of truth. That it is through logic, through inquiry, through critical thinking, as Eric Metaxas would say, Socrates in the City, that this is how we discover truth, through logical questioning. But what is logic? So you and I, let's have a disagreement on something. If there is no spirit, if thought, language, logic are products of brain chemistry, your brain chemistry is giving some ideas to you, my brain chemistry is giving some ideas to me, they happen to be opposite. How is it that you presenting evidence, you presenting arguments changes my mind? And I agree that you are right. I repent of my wrong beliefs and I conform to the truth. This is what the Greeks began to see, logos, that if logic has something to do with truth, then idea of truth, idea of language, idea of logic, idea of evidence, this is beyond brain chemistry. Logos must pre-exist as the ground of logic and language and aesthetics and morality. Now, if you reject the concept of a transcendent logos, the ground of all logic and sense and language. So the problem, the Greeks were right in coming to the conclusion that logic and language cannot make sense, cannot lead us to truth, unless there is logos as the ground of whole universe, of the world of ideas. But where does this logos come from? Where does it live? How do we know it's actually there? This was something which John, in his gospel, when he said, in the beginning was Logos, Logos was with God, Logos was God. This Logos had life, is the source of everything. He became flesh. How do we know? He dwelt with us. We beheld his glory. We touched him. We handled him. We listened to him. We examined him. So we know this is truth. So Logos is really there. He created the universe. He sustains the universe. He came, dwelt with us. So this, the gospel, Christmas, incarnation of Logos, was a philosophy that conquered Greek skepticism, Greek rationalism, Greek mysticism, and made the West a uniquely thinking civilization. So you're right. In 2007, at the University of Minnesota, I gave 10 lectures called Must the Sun Set on the West? And that was actually the original title of my book, which was Nelson then published as the book that made your world, how the Bible created the modern world, including how the Bible created rationality, became the source of the universities, why Protestant Christianity, created modern universities, which evangelicalism abandoned. So Protestant movement created America's best universities. And so Protestant movement, because it believed in the eternal Logos, who had revealed himself by becoming flesh, coming and dwelling with us, that became the source that, yes, in the beginning was rationality of God. We are made in his image. And therefore, to become godly, we must cultivate our minds. Now, how did we lose all of that? This is a post-Moody phenomenon, D.L. Moody phenomenon, where evangelicalism abandoned universities, started Bible seminary movement. So the entire Bible seminary movement, beginning with Moody Bible Institute and Wheaton College and Dallas and Biola and Fuller, etc., this whole movement was basically an anti-intellectual movement. Now, let me be even more provocative and say that in America, the university ministries, such as InterVarsity, Campus Crusade, Navigators, etc., which did a lot of good in teaching Christians to love Jesus and walk with Jesus and have daily quiet time, these were anti-intellectual ministries. They were an expression of a defeated Christianity, because InterVarsity was never seeking to win back Harvard University. It was seeking to win individual students to Christ and disciple them, because they had accepted the defeat that the universities are lost. We cannot win and disciple. Yes, our forefathers founded these universities, but we are the useless body of Christ. His true body, helpful, useful body, victorious body is sitting in heaven. On earth is his useless body, which cannot even win a university back to Christ, back to truth. So the post-truth phrase, post-truth, has become a secular phrase, but it is the American evangelical movement, which was the first post-truth movement in America, likewise in Europe. Evangelicalism is post-truth, and that is why truth has lost the West. You have now universities and Supreme Court judges who do not know what is a boy, what is a girl, what's a man, what's a woman. So these learned, ignorant people are running the country, and we are saying, yes, they should run. So your main charge that America has been warned, like Pearl Harbor attack was being warned, and the leaders didn't pay attention. The problem is actually bigger than that, deeper than that, that you have a lot of theologians in America, many pastors and preachers who are happy that attack is coming, Antichrist is coming, and America should become the kingdom of Antichrist, because when they say, thy kingdom come, they really mean that the kingdom of Antichrist must come in America.
Wow. Okay, Ron, are you still there?
Yeah. I never heard anyone say that InterVarsity was founded as a kind of, surrender to. I mean, they do.
Every single university movement in America is a defeated expression of a defeated Christianity.
Expression of a defeat.
They've accepted the defeat, that we have lost Harvard, we've lost Princeton, we've lost Yale, we cannot win them back. So let's just try and win individuals, and change. Discipling nation has become to mean disciple individuals.
Right. So in other words, you're saying that they should have, they should have focused on winning the university instead of the students. Now, you take InterVarsity, and I'm having a hard time finding a definitive version of its history, because they know when InterVarsity US started, like in the early 40s, but there's already something going on over in the UK and in Canada before that.
Charles Simeon is the father of KICU, Cambridge Intercollegiate Christian Union, which is the source of the whole InterVarsity movement. So Charles Simeon was a great blessing to India. He discipled Henry Martyn, Claudius Buchanan, 5 others, and began to send them as missionaries to India. So he was a great man, but by his time, the end of the 18th century, the things had already begun to degenerate in Europe. So European Christianity degenerated. Now, these were good men, great men, and they did a lot of good to India. But short answer to your question, Charles Simeon, before that, what you had is Puritan movement in England. So Reformation, Puritan movement in England. Out of that came evangelicalism. So Simeon is the first chaplain in Cambridge who begins to disciple individuals, and that's a good thing. But the hope of winning and discipling the university itself, the hope of the obligation to go and disciple nations.
Yeah.
It is not saying go and disciple individuals. Obviously, individuals have to be won for Christ and discipled, but individualism taking over American Christianity.
Yeah.
That we cannot think of nation. The best that we can do is think of people group. Nation means people group. But nation is not people group. That's a mistake that Dr. Ralph Winter and Lausanne movement spread. The basis of a nation is language, not ethnicity. All the people in Babel in Genesis 11 were children of Noah. They were one ethnicity. One ethnicity was divided into many nations by confusion of language. Now, language is about idea. Language is about literature. Language is about culture. Literature which put together the ideas and ideals of society. So a nation is united by language, means it's united by literature, united by ideas. So America is different than Mexico. USA is different than Mexico because you have different history, different ideas, different ideals, and language. That's the essence of nation, but nation is also about government. A people governing themselves in their own territory is a nation. But you move the idea of governance outside, but when you reduce the discipling nation means disciple people group. So American theology has gone wrong at many critical points. And you are right that no one is saying that. No one is saying that InterVarsity begins as a defeated movement which has no hope of winning university back.
So what do you say now? You mentioned how Mexico is different from the United States, and obviously all of these nations have different histories, and we also have very different approaches to personal liberties, civil liberties,
right?
And I'm thinking especially of the relationship between church and state, God and state, religion and state, all those things. In fact, I don't know if you can. We have a pretty clear legal history on the separation of church and state, but we have a wide range of views on separation of religion and God and state. So what do you, if your goal is to take the university back in the United States,
then the goal is to disciple nations.
Okay, the goal is to start at the nation level.
Yeah. So, and nation, as you've just said, is product of ideas. intellectual history is
And
what we have summarized.
no nation is that more true of than the United States. We are a
Right.
product of ideas.
Yes, yes, because of writing, but now writing itself is being challenged by evangelical missions in the name of orality, that we need
Yeah.
orality, not a written thing. So, yes, when we say that language is the foundation of a nation, we mean ideas are the which are expressed in language, expressed in history.
Right.
And to disciple the nation, Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10, is to bring every argument, every idea under captivity of Christ. Of a nation. So InterVarsity Press was every idea under better job. Sorry for that echo. So InterVarsity Press was doing a better job with publishing books than InterVarsity Movement, which had been taken over by the whole fallacy of the missionary movement from America, of that discipling nation means discipling individuals, winning individuals for Christ, and reaching unreached people groups. But the InterVarsity Press was beginning to publish some books, quite a few books, which were really taking the battle at the level of ideas and mind. So amongst many of the publishers in America, InterVarsity Press did a very good job. But even that is now being weakened a lot, because there are many complicated things behind it, and I'll be happy to go into longer discussion of some of the issues. That why exactly was Harvard University lost? How was it lost? And why did evangelical movement abandon the fight for the university and retreated into an individualism that let's save individual souls, take them to heaven? Why did this happen? That'll be a very worthwhile discussion.
Harvard was pretty much lost in the 1820s to the Unitarians. That happened pretty early. And then, of course, Princeton is lost 100 years later. And when Machen and company ended up finally evacuating it. And because the university is lost and things are so confused, there's a lot of people who don't feel very safe right now, right, Don? And your mic is off, so.
I was just going to get to that before we get too deeply involved in kind of where things are at and how individual salvation and discipling nations, I don't know that it's one or the other. I really do think there's a combination going on. But with the university, there is a problem when you have students who are schooled against truth.
Yeah.
And feel like words are more injurious than sticks and stones. They need some protective measures when they go home on holidays.
Truth itself can appear dangerous and harmful, can't it?
Absolutely.
And we want to help these, at least, our friends at World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas whose time is gone. They want to, speak to this issue, and they have a product. So after 4 semesters at your small progressive liberal arts college, you're flying home to visit your red state relatives. You remember to bring your emotional support puppies. You pack all your comfort blankets and pillows. You even remember your adult coloring books. But it still feels like something is missing. You don't feel safe. What can you do? You need instant safe space. It has patented anti-free speech technology, which gives you guaranteed, it really does, gives you guaranteed protection from trigger words, microaggressions, unwelcome ideas, and cognitive dissonance. Feel protected, feel safe with instant safe space available at World's End Theology Outlet. So this is where we are today. People, they create safe
Can't
spaces.
hear you. If you can hear me,
Can you hear me?
if you can hear me,
Yes, I
carry on. I'm
can.
having issues with my
I
sound.
can hear you just fine. And Vishal, you
Yeah,
can hear me too?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes, I
so
can hear
Don,
both of you.
great. I hope everybody at home and wherever you are can hear us. Uh, yeah, I mean, when you have students who try to uh, protect themselves from ideas that they disagree with, I mean, you've not only lost the university as a bastion of truth, you've lost it as a cultural resource. I don't see how these universities can produce anyone who can help us, and it really in just about any way to maintain the freedoms, to maintain the advances that we've made as a people. Uh, it just, I mean, how you can't even really maintain pluralism. Pluralism is going to eventually become a racist idea. It's going to be a misogynistic idea. It's going to be on that list of things that preserve the patriarchy eventually. They're going to, so in other words, we are heading toward a monolithic ideological society, kind of like North Korea. Only whatever it comes out with, we haven't seen yet. What do you think about that?
That is true. So, yes, we have to win individuals for Christ. But are they becoming soldiers in a war against the kingdom of Satan? Or are they being won to escape the battleground? So part of the problem, if I may be even worse than I've been already, it's a part of America's problem is that a lot of the older current Christian leadership of churches were pastors who went to seminaries because they wanted to escape being drafted into Vietnam War. So they were attracted towards the escapist spirituality. They are not interested in a war because they think that peace means escapism. Escapism is peace. So yes, there's a conflict. Pearl Harbor is ready to be attacked. Enemy is preparing, and enemy is advancing, but we don't believe that we are in a war. We're not going to really prepare for war. We're not getting ready for war. So this is one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is a theological problem that so many theologians have been saying that when Jesus ascended into heaven, received the title deed of the earth, he actually, when he opened the first seal, he commissioned the Antichrist to go and win the world. This is what Billy Graham taught. That in Revelation 6, verse 1, when the Lamb opens the first seal, he is sending out the Antichrist to go out and conquer the world. If Antichrist is being launched by Jesus as the first thing after his ascension and receiving the authority to conquer the world, how can the church be the overcomer? So the 7 churches that are compromised and defeated in Revelation 2 and 3, each of those churches told to go and conquer. Revelation 11 is telling us, verse 12, that Revelation 12:11, that they overcame the beast, the dragon, with the blood of the Lamb, with the word of their testimony. Revelation 15, Revelation 17, 19, etc. It's all about the church overcoming, but theologically, eschatologically, American Christianity has become a defeated religion that no Antichrist must come Antichrist must rule. So yes, warnings are coming, very good. The Japanese are coming, attacking Pearl Harbor. May they enslave whole of the USA, because then we will have the Antichrist coming and ruling America. So this defeated mentality has impacted the American eschatology, American theology, and it is not breeding a church. Yes, you're converting individuals, praise the Lord, but you're not turning those individuals into soldiers who will bring every thought into the captivity of Christ.
What do you do? What are the marching orders of the soldiers that we're supposed to be creating?
To go out
training?
And conquer, disciple nations.
So in other words, well, let's say in our own nation now, we have to retake territory now. We've lost territory. So in our context right now, what does that look like? I mean, does it look like,
it's very
I'm thinking encouraging young people.
It's very simple. In the third education revolution movement, the second education revolution began with Martin Luther in 1520, of which America is one of the finest fruit of. When Luther understood priesthood and kingship of all believers, he downplayed kingship, he highlighted priesthood of all believers. But when he understood that this requires every child to be educated to seeking kingdom of God, for Luther did not mean going forward in a crusade and praying the sinner's prayer. For seeking God's kingdom and his righteousness, for Luther meant sending your child to school, Christian school, keeping him there for 10 years so that he really understands God's will, because he cannot serve God unless he knows God. So education, training, renewing the mind, writing the law of God in the hearts and minds of people, through which was the process of education. This is what Luther understood as seeking God's kingdom and his righteousness. And that's what drove the Protestant movement to be an educational movement, discipling whole nations. So Harvard, Princeton, Yale, these were movements that were producing the leadership of America for every sphere, judges and lawyers and accountants and bureaucrats and politicians. But seminaries were producing priests who performed rituals, including the rituals of preaching. Seminaries were not producing shepherds, those who care for the minds and hearts and economies and health of the nation. So the shift from the university to the seminary movement was, instead of training leaders for the nations, you train leaders for the church, and the church becomes a ritual performing institution. This was the tragedy. But your question is, what about the future? The future is that today, every church in America can offer a better education than Harvard and MIT and Stanford and Oxbridge. The students should students should enroll in a Christian university, but they should go to attend classes in the local church under an academic pastor who is a homeschooling mother, credentialed to become church college mother. So she should oversee that the students are studying, not fighting, they are working together, learning together, etc. So every church, if just 100,000 churches in America take 15 college students and have a class where undergraduate students, that's 1.5 million students in the church every day. Second year, you have a second academic pastor, another 15 students. You have 3 million students in the church today. In a 4-year program, American church can be discipling 4 to 6 million young people every day, with a curriculum created not just by professors of one university. Every university has some good professors, some mediocre professors, some useless professors who should not be teaching. Students are paying. I mean, they have other users. But teaching is not gift. They should not be teaching. But students are paying high fee to listen to people who are not gifted as a teacher, not called to be teachers, but they have to teach because they're on the payroll and students have to pay for it. But the curriculum should be created by the world's best experts. There is no reason to condemn your students to listen to your own professors. Students should be able to study best subjects from best professors from all over the world. Internet makes that possible. University should allow do practical training, should test, should give degrees and diplomas, and universities should be tough, not make it easy for students to pass, but study hard. So American church has the capacity to disciple America, but American church does not have the theology to disciple nation.
Yes.
That's
Right.
the problem.
You mean the theology? Well, can we get back to? I'm intrigued by the logistical aspects of what you're proposing. You're not proposing that. Maybe you are. Maybe I missed it. These students, they stay in their colleges and universities, but they also come to the church.
No.
They leave the colleges and universities.
They leave the colleges and universities. They're taught by the colleges and universities in their local church.
By the professors.
By the internet and the
for best professors from all over the world. They may go to the university to do practicals. So a young woman wants to become deliver babies. She can learn how to deliver babies by watching 1,000 videos in a church with 2 or 3 other students. But she will go to actually deliver babies in a local hospital or in the medical university. Likewise, a student coming to the church will learn brain surgery by watching 3D videos which are filmed in the best surgical theaters all over the world. But when he or she actually has to do brain surgery to qualify as a brain surgeon, he or she will go to a medical university. So likewise in engineering, same with agriculture, same with studying how to learn robots. All the theory, including virtual experiments, can be done in local churches. The system as it has existed for 1,000 years of going physically to the university. So this is a problem like Grand Canyon University. It has almost 100,000 students, 20,000 students living there, 80,000 students in their own homes. But Grand Canyon reflects, and Liberty and Regent, these universities reflect the poor theology of the church that has developed in America for the last 100 years.
What makes it so poor? I hear Don give an amen there. Maybe either one of you help me out here. I have my own ideas.
Why are these 80,000 students who are enrolled in Grand Canyon studying in their own homes? Why aren't they studying in the church under an academic pastor being mentored? Why should Grand Canyon have...
I'm shaking my head yes for this reason. Ron asked the question, why am I agreeing about the state of the universities, in this case, Grand Canyon University? I will tell you why.
Right? We're talking about the theology.
Pardon?
Well, we're talking about the theology, right?
Right. We're talking about the theology. Why is it, here's what I'm going to say, that Baylor University has a Enneagram certificate program given up on the importance of sound theology.
Good question.
Liberty University has the Enneagram as part of their curriculum because they're giving up on the importance of theology. Why is it that, quote, Christian periodicals are silent on these issues?
I have an answer to those questions, by the way.
Pardon?
I have an answer to those. As one who worked in higher education for from 1987 to 1999, it's all about marketing.
Aha. And who do you market to? Anybody who will come and pay the fee, and you don't
Right.
want to offend your potential consumers, and so you soften your theological positions in order to not offend a potential
Yeah,
purchaser.
the first rule of salesmanship: find out what the customer wants and sell it to him.
Right,
Okay, so they are looking for what does they look at students as consumers,
right,
and they look at themselves as having a product,
right.
instead of saying we are educators and they are students. Now, obviously, there's a business end to this, and that's why I'm thinking, as someone who did fundraising and worked in a business office over those years that I mentioned, I'm thinking that, if you're going to do this, you still have to deal with the question of accreditation and producing a marketable degree. You still have to, in other words, you still have to attract students. In one sense, you still have to have a product.
Right.
But if that's the way you primarily look at it, in other words, if you want to get students to come with the saying you're going to be able to get a job, obviously you have to deal with that on some level. But
As I understand, everything I've read of Vishal's material and what he's communicating today,
I assume that's already covered. I assume that.
Yes.
Yes.
He's saying you will get your degree, you will then be able to go out and get employed, but it will be a degree that includes a right understanding of who you are, how the world operates.
Right. It's not the primary mission isn't getting the person the job.
Right.
Obviously that's needed, but the primary mission is true education.
Correct.
Christian education.
Biblical.
Yeah. See, let me make it really concrete and really make it disturbing. Grand Canyon University is doing a great job. It's earning $300-400 million a year. They have 20,000 students living there in dormitories. To disciple 20,000 students, mentoring them, you need 2,000 pastors, one person taking responsibility of 10 people. Now, why can't these 20,000 students, be in their own churches and have their local pastors, elders, deacons, parents mentor them?
Right.
Why do they have to? Why does the university? Because all that the university is doing is inviting the moral failure of the American high school to come into a Christian university. There's no way you can manage 20,000 students and mentor them in the area of sexuality, in the area of relationships, etc. The problem really began with the dispensational movement, which interpreted Daniel 9:77 and saw that there is no mention of the church in Daniel 9, from the issuing of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem all the way to Messiah. There's no mention of the church. Therefore, people like Schofield and his group particularly concluded that church was not part of God's original plan. Church was plan B, like Stepney Tire. Your main tire, Israel, which was supposed to be God's kingdom, has gone flat. You put a
program.
Stepney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I am going to interrupt here for a second, Vishal, because I would argue that the problem predates that. The problem, as Ron has pointed out in our discussions in the past, it was a long time that the pastor's primary job was to train layman scholars. In other words, discipleship happened in the church by the pastor who educated the leaders within the church and others. In 1825, we had a change from sound biblical teaching to seeker-sensitive models through Finney. Get them in there, do an altar call, bring them forward, get them saved, and send them on the road. Over the next 100 years, you had very little theology proper going on within the church. By the time Darwin comes up, no one's really around to give a sound refutation. In the beginning of the 20th century, the church was so biblically illiterate that they produced a series of volumes called the Fundamentals. Why? because no one knew the fundamentals anymore. Very few, at least.
Well, they
And they're
couldn't defend them
taking
very well.
whether you agree with dispensationalism or not, dispensationalism is not the primary problem. It is maybe a secondary problem, but the primary problem started in the early 1800s.
So we have a
Yeah.
disagreement here.
1850s is when Horace Mann began to argue that church should not be educating, state should be educating, because he was a Unitarian. He was a Unitarian, and he said that if the church controls education, church will teach doctrines such as Trinity, which are peripheral issues, and student doesn't have to learn Trinity. Student needs to learn values. So Horace Mann, he was the first one. He began as a Secretary of Education in Massachusetts, and then won a place in the House of Representatives in federal government. So he was the first champion that church should not be educating, state should be educating. By the time of post-World War I, when Dewey becomes the most important educational philosopher, he is not a Unitarian, he is a pragmatist. He doesn't believe that the Bible should be taught. Horace Mann believed that the Bible should be taught as a source of moral values. But Dewey says, no, pragmatism, common sense is sufficient to teach people that they should not commit adultery, they should love their own wives, not their neighbor's wife, they should not murder, they should not steal. So the Ten Commandments is not God's word. God's word is not necessary to teach morality. Common sense and pragmatism can teach morality. So it was really, but by that time, you're right, the Christian mind in America was dead, as Mark Knoll will say, or Harry Blemar will say, that the seminaries had killed the Christian mind, and therefore America did not have Christian leadership that could stand up against whether the Unitarianism, the Trinity is the foundation for knowing male and female as different, that two people can be different and one. You don't have to minimize differences to affirm oneness and equality. The male and female can be different, can be equal, and two of them can become three, have a baby, and that baby is also one part of one family. Is all three are equal, but there is hierarchy that parents have authority over the child. The authority does not preclude equality, but the American church was incapable of dealing with the assault on truth, because if you give up the fundamental reason why you have Supreme Court judges who don't know what is a woman, it's because you've given up Trinity. Once you give up Trinity, you have to choose between oneness or equality and differences.
So I think one thing you have established, and I think, Don, you totally agree with this, is that the problem with our educational system isn't something that just happened in the last 30 years.
No,
it isn't. It goes way back. It starts. Is it fair to say at the beginning, sometime around the beginning of the 19th century?
Yeah.
Would you say? What would you say,
Horace
Vishal?
Mann died in 1852.
59.
As the member of 59, was it? Okay, 52 is when he became the member of a member of House of Representatives and began to champion. But actually, the problem, as you correctly pointed out, he was speaking in a climate which was conducive to him, because the Harvard actually was lost in 1805.
1805 sounds about right. Yeah.
1805 is when Henry Ware, a Unitarian, was appointed to the chair, because of which a number of theologians left Harvard
The reason I picked
and
1820s
yeah,
is because I think a battle raged for years after that, but it was pretty much
yes.
settled by about the 1820s that
So
it was going to be a Unitarian school
yeah,
going forward.
Right.
yes.
Right.
But of course, Unitarian was irrationalism, trusting in reason,
Yeah,
because if
and it
the
was
knowledge of truth comes to you through revelation, then uh, then they were. It was humanist hubris that the human mind can know the truth, that we can know that there is
yeah,
one God and only one God. Jesus is not
yeah.
God.
This is excellent. This
Holy.
really ties it all together. Well, the reason I'm saying this, the reason I'm pointing this out, that this is a problem that didn't begin in the last 30 years,
Right.
40 years. It
Right.
didn't start with what's his name, the guy who was the bomber becoming a Chicago University professor and then becoming
No.
a political advisor. It started way before that. And the reason I'm pointing that out, Dennis, to get back to your original illustration, you talked about the warnings for Pearl Harbor.
Right.
You've heard of Colonel Billy Mitchell?
Right.
In 1922, General Patrick, his superior, sent him on a tour of Asia, Hawaii, and Japan.
Right.
And he came back and he issued a 324-page report warning about an attack from Japan on Pearl Harbor. That was in
Right.
1922.
Right.
And he
So that was
faced
almost 20 years earlier.
he faced nothing but opposition for the rest of his career. He was eventually court-martialed for something he said that he probably could have avoided saying, but it was he was getting so frustrated with the chain of command. He said, we need to modernize. We need to be ready. We need to be ready for this. They blew him off.
Right.
And so I think it's there. Vishal, I'm sure you're not the last. I'm sure others have come before you and have been worn out by the machine, the big Eva, as they call it, big evangelicalism, which is telling you, don't worry about it. So we're going to pray for you because I'm sure you're going to be attacked. I'm sure you've already been attacked.
Sure.
At least marginalized.
Oh yeah, it's like, yeah, this is what they do. This is what they did to Billy Mitchell. And did we not get attacked on December 7th, 1941? Just like he said.
Right. And that's the point. The warnings were there. The leadership looked the other way. And we have the same thing in the church and have had for 200 years now.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So, and with that, we are over our time as always. Vishal, I really thank you for a second. Ron is going to waltz us out of here.
I'm going to do the 3-4 thing. Okay, let's give credit to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Kneel Before Me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Culinary services are provided by Chef Hammond Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and The Opposer. Our Mormon Archives manager is Polygamus. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau Chief is Lucy Goosey. Transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys, The Humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yolik Pulling. Technical assistance comes through Mercury Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham and Howe. Grievance resolution director is Giovanna Pisami. Director of Privacy Assurance is Wiretapping. And original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never be able to prove that in a court of law.
Never happen.
I don't think you're going to do that. No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So now we're going to say adios to everybody. We had issues with Facebook, but we got through this.